Hello, my channel mammals, and anybody whom I've never met before, welcome to Yankee Fairy. This is an important video. I'm smiling right now, but I have a very intense reason for meeting with you. For you, for us, and for the posterity of all mankind. And that is a talk about objects and their travel through time and civilizations and centuries and situations, wars and family life and all the different things that occur. We had a little incident several months ago which I thought I talked to you about, but evidently I didn't. But I'm going to just lightly talk to you about it now. I'm just sure I did. But, okay, a gentleman from Chicago bought a cuppa and saucer from our superfluous collection. And he was disappointed because it had pinholes, a few little pinholes on the inside of the cuppa. And he was afraid that he was going to die from drinking something out of that cuppa. And so I looked at it, he sent it back. I looked at it and I thought, oh gosh, this is not a problem. And I described to him how they get there and where they come from. And he loved the story so much, he decided to keep the cuppa and saucer. And he's so proud of it, and he's so proud of his new knowledge. And so it's been a wonderful opportunity for people to learn. With Majolica glaze, Majolica glaze is just another kind of glaze. Why they call it Majolica is, I forget why, but I'll tell you what it is. It is a glaze that has tin in it. It's a clear glaze that we poured tin into, which is a white material, and it makes it opaque. So like this little fish dish, the clay is red clay, terracotta clay, but the glaze makes it white. And so, and we do that because of a long tradition, which wasn't even our tradition. Way up on the tops of the mountains in China, the clay, the natural clay, is white. Why is that? It's because it's on the peaks of the mountains and it hasn't ever traveled down the mountains. It hasn't gone with the weather. It's just still up there, packed together. And the Chinese would climb up these mountains and, harvest the clay, the white, pure, what we call porcelain, and lots of people call it China. And I'll explain why in a minute. But they would climb down the sides of the mountains and follow the clay runs, and they would end up in the riverbeds. And by the time they were in the riverbeds, they were a whole different consistency. On the top of the mountain, they were kind of chunky and short. We call it short. Like if you break a piece, it just breaks like a rock. But in the riverbeds, they were elastic. You could take a hunk of clay and wad it up and make it into a little mouse or something. And so it was more plastic and easy to work with. And so they started making things out of terracotta clay, meaning of the earth. And the reason it's that color, this reddish brown color, or any color in between, is because of the amount of runoff from the rivers and the lakes and all of the rains and the weather that happen to it on its journey. And along the way, it picks up little bits of dead leaves and dead bugs and twigs, and in the bottom of the riverbed it gets very dirty with all these little elements, and it makes it sticky and malleable, and it changes its color naturally. Oh, the iron in the earth, the ochre, all the natural elements that it also carries with it on its journey. Well, the Chinese were so used to having white, pure white porcelain clay that they thought it was more precious than the terracotta clay, even though it was not nearly as easy to work with, because you have to fire it to a very high temperature to get it to melt enough, because it's very, well, the consistency of the clay is of a high temperature, high melting point. And so, anyway, then they started, they still made things out of the porcelain and still do, but then they started making clay for export. You know, after everybody traveled through the East to come and build the West, they saw business and they thought, oh, these people traveling to this desolate land they're calling America, they need dishes. So they started making dishes and packing it on mules and wagons and sending it across the deserts and everywhere. But they thought, oh, it has to look pure. So they made Majolica glaze, which is the glaze with the tin in it, so that it would look like porcelain. And they made a pattern called the blue onion, which is what they put on every single pattern of dinnerware. It was just a natural blue, that, you know, one of the natural elements that makes blue. And they would make these onions and flora and so forth on the edges of the plates. And so we were used to having that too. Anyway, so we started making things out of Majolica ourselves once we got our own pottery set up. And so that's what caused that. However, that movement, I wanted to tell the man and show him an image of what those little pinholes come from. Here's an example. But see these little holes here and here and here? That's not a hole, that's over here. Also, around the edges you can see some activity. See all those little white marks there? And here? Well, those they're a kind of stage of the pinhole. When the clay, you know, you don't realize what's going on in those kilns that make the firings to bring the temperature up high to make the pottery last. And they, when they're in the kiln, it's like a moving experience. They're things jumping off the pots and volatilizing in the air and landing on another pot, and I mean, it's just like a whole neighborhood of activity. And it's so wonderful to see it in the finished product, because these little white holes are where there were pinholes, but it got hot enough on the inner edges of this bowl that they were able to melt together again. Whereas on the outside of the bowl, it never got quite as hot as the inside of the bowl, so the pinholes never got all the way back together again, melted together again. But these are not dangerous elements. Nothing ever could happen to anybody. It's just wonderful. It's a beautiful story. And there's nothing to be afraid of. The clay is so pure and so, there's nothing dangerous about it. And it's not a clay with a lot of, it has iron in it, but it doesn't have some of the elements that are dangerous. So that explains that. When he heard the story over the phone, he started to really love his cuppa and saucer. He thought, wow, I have a story to tell with this. And he knew it wasn't really dangerous. He just thought it was flawed. But it's not. It's part of the process and part of what we love about what we do. Yeah, so I love this bowl. And the name of this pattern is Monet, because he loved yellow and blue. And so do I. And probably so do you. So it's a very happy, fresh expression, like the sunshine. I use it all the time. We're very rough with our things. We use them We live with them. We mix up batter, and we do egg, grinding, and all the things you would do, with just as much vigor and gusto and love as whatever bowl you could be using. It's not any different to us. It's all part of our life, because we kind of grew up together in a way. Like we've known each other for many, many years prior to you knowing us. So I really wanted to show you that. And that's just the beginning of my stage 1 of my little visit with you. I'm going to do stage 2 now.